I'm Amanda from Love and Renovations, and today I'm here to talk to you about organization. Do you struggle with organization in your home? I find that most of us feel like it's really hard to get things to a place of organization and actually keep them there, especially if you have kids. I'm really passionate about organization, and I've been on a bit of a self-reflective journey this year to really get my house under control. And so I thought today maybe we could chat a little bit. I could share some things I've learned, I could share a few projects, and we could just get cozy and talk about organization. Does that sound like a good time to you? Because it sounds like a good time to me. Okay, I'm gonna settle. So, I've always been a really organized and orderly person. I like to keep my house clean, I like to know where everything is, and I really do try to keep things organized. But I have a husband who does not care about organization, and I have children who really don't care about organization, and things tend to fall apart pretty quickly. This year, I decided that I was gonna take control of my home back once and for all, and I was really gonna get everything organized in a way that it would stay that way. And that's kind of how I discovered the magic of what I lovingly dubbed micro-organization, and I later learned is actually a word that people in the organization community use for organizing super small spaces down to the tiniest little detail. It might sound overwhelming or a little weird, but I promise you that once you discover micro-organizing in your home and how you can make these tiny little pockets of your home feel super organized, you're gonna get addicted really quickly. You're gonna wanna micro-organize everything in your house. And the beautiful thing is that once you start organizing these tiny little spaces in your home, it adds up over time. And before you know it, you kind of feel like maybe you have a little bit of control over the chaos in your house once again. It really is a bit of a magical feeling. So today, that's what we're diving into. Okay, so first of all, I threw out this term micro-organization. Let's talk about what that means and what that looks like in your home. So to me, micro-organization is when I take a tiny spot in my home that we use on the regular and make it so organized that it's almost impossible for the system to fall apart. For example, if I take my spice drawer that used to just be a giant jumble of spices and build a rack and put all the spices into nice little jars, then the system is so clear that even my husband, who doesn't care about organization or cleaning at all, knows exactly how to use it and isn't gonna mess it up. Another example is my kids' art closet. It was a complete wreck, but I decided that I was going to once and for all get it organized. And I organized down to the tiniest little detail. I labeled everything, and we're going on a few months now of it staying organized because the system is so clear that no one can miss it. I think a lot of times whenever we are trying to organize our home or get things in order, we fall into this trap of trying to just tackle everything at once. Like, I'm gonna get my life under control, I'm gonna get my home organized. And so you just try to organize everything. And the problem with that approach is that you're gonna miss the details. You miss the little things sometimes, like labeling every little object. Or you do it in such a rush that you don't take the time to live with it and make small adjustments and see what works for your family. Instead, what I've learned is actually that a more manageable, one thing at a time approach is gonna make your life easier, and it's gonna create an organization system that is actually sustainable. I've been making it my mission this year to take a few spaces every month and get them organized. And so far, not one of the spaces that I've organized has fallen back into disarray. That's like a brand new record for me. That's never happened before. If I can do it with my completely disorganized husband and two chaotic young boys, then anyone can get their home organized, I promise. So let's take a second to dive into some of the projects that I've done in my house. I'm gonna take you through 5 projects that I've completed recently. And specifically, we're talking in the kitchen because that's where I focused most of my effort. However, all of the things that you're gonna see today can easily be tweaked and applied to any space in your home as long as you get creative. So I'm gonna walk you through my kitchen and show you some of the little micro-organizing projects that I've done. And then I'll give you some ideas of how you can translate all of those ideas to other spaces around your home. And finally, at the end of this presentation, we're gonna talk about one of the biggest pitfalls that people come up against whenever it comes to organizing, and I'm gonna show you how to solve the problem. Are you ready to dive in? Let's head to my kitchen. So how did I do this and why does it work? All this spice rack is a little bit of 1/2-inch plywood that I cut into strips and used to make these little risers. It was a project that took me just a few hours to put together, and then I tossed them in here and set the spices on top. Here's why it works. This system is so much easier than anything that we were doing before. Before, our spices were just thrown in here like a jumbled mess, and we had to dig around to find anything that we wanted. By putting them here where you can see every single spice all at once, it's so much easier to find what we want, and we are a lot more motivated to keep it organized because it works. Whenever you find a system that works for your family's gonna be a lot more motivated to keep it that way. I took the extra step of decanting all of the spices into these uniform jars so that they match. It's a small step that isn't necessarily required. However, there's a really satisfying feeling when you pull open this drawer and see all these beautiful matching spices. If they were kind of a jumbled mess of all the different brands of spices, it wouldn't be as visually pleasing, and knowing myself, I wouldn't be as motivated to keep it organized. Sometimes it sounds frivolous when you're organizing to take the extra step to make sure that it's beautiful too, but know yourself. If you're the type of person who, like me, is a lot more likely to keep it organized when it's beautiful, then take that extra time, because you will never regret putting in a little more effort to make sure it's a system you're going to maintain. Okay, let's take a minute to talk about the pantry. I know this has to be a pain point for so many of you because pantry organization is hard. I learned a lot from getting this pantry organized, and one of the biggest things I learned is that sometimes when it comes to your home, your first instincts are wrong and you need to adjust and tweak and change until things work. We have a really awkwardly shaped pantry, and when we first moved into our house, we kept all of our food in these cabinets instead of in the pantry. We thought that by using cabinets where we can actually reach everything and don't have this weird dead space back here, we thought that would help us stay more organized. But actually, it was a terrible idea, and our food was a jumbled mess for the first 2.5 years that we lived here. Finally, we decided to take the time to switch it out, and I poured a lot of effort into getting this pantry organized. And you know what? It works beautifully for us. I added some extra things like this organization system and a whiteboard over here. I really micro-organized and poured every ounce of effort I had into all the tiny little details, and it's working beautifully. So it's really important to remember that just because you've always stored things in one place, that doesn't mean it has to stay like that. You can switch things up, you can move things around, and you can play with it until you find what works best for your family, because sometimes what you think is going to work best is not actually what's going to be the best system for your family. I could talk to you all day about pantry organization and how I've learned to keep things organized, but instead we're just going to hit the highlights on how we micro-organize this and what lessons you can take from it. First of all, there's a place for everything. Every tiny little thing in this pantry has a very specific spot, and it's labeled. That's key when it comes to micro-organizing and making sure that your family knows the system. The labels aren't there for you because you would put it back. It's the other people who live in your house that need those labels. Another important lesson you can take from a project like this is maximizing every inch of space that you have. I've got hooks in here that you can't even see around the corner to hold things like aprons or our fly swatters or other random things. I've utilized the back of the door to hold foil and plastic wrap and a whiteboard where we can jot notes for each other. Thinking through every little detail and how you can really maximize the use of all of this space is what micro-organizing is all about. If I had tackled this pantry as part of a bigger whole home organization project, I never would have thought of all of these little details. Instead, I poured all of my efforts into just getting this one tiny little closet organized. And because I really honed in on this space and didn't let myself get distracted by anything else, it stayed that way. Every inch of it is organized, and I learned a few important lessons that I could take with me into the next project. This silverware drawer is a great opportunity to talk about how sometimes the things that you can buy at the store to keep you organized aren't going to work for you as well as if you would just make something yourself. Now, I know we're not all woodworkers out there, and that's perfectly fine, but it's important to remember that you can get creative with what you have in your home if the things that you can find at the store don't really work for you. For example, this is our silverware drawer. For years, I used a silverware drawer organizer that I had just bought at Target or whatever. And because our drawer is so large, it never really fit in there very well. It was constantly sliding around, it eventually broke, and it didn't really hold everything the way that I needed it to. I finally got tired of the pre-built silverware drawer organizer that didn't work for us, and I decided to make my own. I built something that fits the exact specifications of our drawer, and honestly, it was so easy. I just used my circular saw to tear down a few pieces of 1/2-inch plywood, and I glued it together and slipped it into place. And now my whole drawer is organized and stays that way. Where else could you apply a lesson like this? Literally any drawer in your house. If you have a drawer in your dresser that can never stay organized, try getting creative and making your own system for it. You can create dividers out of cardboard. You can buy some drawer dividers from places like Amazon and put them where you need them in your drawer, or you can try to build something on your own just like I did. The bottom line is sometimes those one-size-fits-all solutions don't actually really work best for your home. Get creative with what you have and what you can do, and try to make your own little systems to really hyper-organize the little drawers in your house, because I promise it makes a difference. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the kitchen cabinets, because if you're anything like me, it can be hard to keep them organized. Sometimes you just fall into a habit of just throwing things in there and stacking it all up until it reaches a point where you open the cabinet and everything kind of just falls out and attacks you. That can't just be me, right? You do this too. I finally got tired of the tower of pots and pans down in this cabinet and having to unassemble everything just to get one thing out every time I wanted to cook, and I decided to build an organization system. Now, this is the sort of thing that you can also purchase pre-made if you prefer. It's a little more expensive and a little less customizable, but if you don't have the DIY or woodworking skills to build your own, that's totally a viable option. The key is to think about how you use the space and how you want it to be organized. For me, our most used pan actually stays on our stove most of the time, but we have some other pans that we like to be able to use and want to be able to access them quickly. So I built little dividers for each of the pots and pans that we have, and I made it super clear exactly where to put things. This is something I've harped on quite a bit when it comes to micro-organizing, but that's because it's so important. You need to think through every step of how you use a space and how you clean up in a space so that you can make sure that you don't miss a single detail. If you don't leave any room for error, and if you take the time to really pour all your effort into this one tiny space and get it fully organized and working for you, it's gonna stay that way. So what's a lesson that you can take from this specific system and apply to other places in your home? First of all, the power of having even just one cabinet that is fully organized is gonna spur you and motivate you to get all the other ones organized. I promise, it's now killing me that the rest of my cabinets haven't been organized to this detail. Secondly, another important lesson that I've learned from this and all of these other micro-organizing projects is that you need to take your time with it. Pick one project in your home, one tiny little drawer, one cabinet, one corner of the house, one closet, and pour all of your efforts into getting it fully organized. Then wait. Don't take on another project. Don't move on to anything else. Just sit with that one for a few weeks and observe your family as they interact with it. See where the pain points are, see what they're struggling to remember to put away, and see what they're maintaining and what they aren't. Then make some tweaks and adjustments until you know it's at a point where it's going to stay that way. If you really want longevity in your organization projects, it really helps to take the time to wait afterwards, watch how your family's going to interact with it, and make some tweaks to make sure that it's going to last for you. We've all got a junk drawer in our house, right? I can't be the only one who has one. Mine is exceptionally large. And this is a really good example of where the pre-purchased little organization systems that you can find may actually work really well. For this drawer, I purchased some interlocking bins that came in assorted sizes, and I filled the entire drawer with nothing but bins. And I actually broke a little bit of a rule here, and I didn't label it because it would just be in the bottom of the bin anyway. And every single thing has a place, and it has stayed like this, you guys. It's magical. I don't know. It really continues to amaze me how when I pour the effort into making sure that every single thing in a little bitty pocket of my home has a space, that little bitty pocket of my home stays organized, no matter who touches it. If the kids come in here, they can clearly see where things go. If my husband comes in here, he can clearly see where to put things back, and it stays organized exactly how I did it. I have struggled for years with a junk drawer that I would organize and would fall back into disarray within a few months. But now this is essentially a foolproof system, because when you take something out, there's nowhere to put it except where it belongs. And that is where micro-organizing really can change your life, because if you make the systems in your home so clear that it doesn't even make sense to put something where it doesn't belong, then your family is going to naturally fall into a rhythm of following the system. And isn't that exactly the goal of organizing your home in the first place? Okay, so you've seen all 5 of the organization projects in my kitchen. Let's head back to the cozy chair and talk a little bit more about one final pitfall that people come up against whenever it comes to organizing, and I'll teach you how to solve it. I really hope that you were able to find a little bit of inspiration for your own home in some of these projects that I've shared. I hope that you're able to take some of the lessons that I've learned from organizing my own home and apply them to your house so that you can get a few small spaces in your home organized and get motivated to do all of it eventually. Now, let's talk a little bit about one thing that I notice over and over again that people struggle with when it comes to getting their home organized. This might not be the most popular opinion, but I am a firm believer that until you declutter in your home, you're never going to get it organized. A lot of us tend to hold on to things and think that if we just try hard enough to get all of our junk organized, it'll work out. But the truth is, if you have stuff in your home that you're not using, no amount of organization systems or tips or tricks is really going to help you. First, you have to reduce the clutter. Decluttering is something that I got really passionate about a few years ago, and I have made it my mission to keep my home and my belongings as clutter-free as I can and really make sure that all of the things that we have in our house are things that we love and we're using. It's such an overwhelming prospect to think about decluttering your entire home. I get it. Where do you start? What do you get rid of? How do you know what to keep? How in the world am I ever going to get through this entire giant house? Well, I've got something that might help you a little bit. I've got a free 5-day e-course that's an introduction to my book, 30 Days to a Tidier Home. If you opt in to receive my bonus, you'll receive the first week of my ebook for free. What does that mean? Well, it means that you will get a free 7-day step-by-step guide to getting started reducing clutter in your home. This guide will give you step-by-step instructions every day for 7 days and give you a taste of what it feels like to see some success in reducing the clutter in your home and starting to make things feel a little more organized. If you love it, you can get the entire guide and learn how to declutter your home in just 30 days. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you found some inspiration here. If you enjoyed any of the projects that you saw or want to know more about me and what I do, you can find me at loveandrenovations.com or over on Instagram at loverenovations. I would love to get to know you. Thanks so much for watching.